Kia, thank you so much for joining us today on the Nonstop Nonprofit Podcast. For those in our audience who I am a new face, new voice to, my name is David Schwab. I am Director of Marketing and Growth at Funraise. We have Kia Croom on our podcast today, who is one of the most well-versed and one of the best brains in fundraising that I know. I'm so excited for my first time on the podcast to also be her first time on the podcast. And I think we're going to have a really awesome conversation. And I think there's going to be a lot to learn and a lot to enjoy. So, Kia, thank you for taking time with us. You have decades of fundraising experience in all capacities. As leaders within organizations, as a consultant, and even now as the leader of your own organization. So I'm really excited to have you on, let you share your wisdom and your experience with our audience and learn some stuff from you while we're having our conversation today.
I love it. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is the highlight of my week.
Awesome. Well, Kia, as you know, the topic of our podcast this season is conversations with innovative nonprofit leaders about what they're doing to change the way they do fundraising or change the way they deliver programs or change the way they serve their clients and their audience or engage donors and supporters. And there are a few people I know of in the sector who are doing more innovative things than you are right now. So thank you so much for joining. I am excited to have you as really the first voice in this conversation with us from your seat. So I've talked enough about you. I think it's your turn. Why don't you give us an intro? Tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into the nonprofit sector? What kind of fundraising have you done? What seats have you held? And then specifically with your passion of equipping under-resourced nonprofits, how have you helped and gotten plugged into that?
Yeah, so I sit here wearing two hats. I sit here as the president and CEO of Kia Croom Fundraising and Philanthropy, a fundraising firm, a Black woman-owned fundraising firm that works exclusively with nonprofits advancing racial justice or responding to structural inequities impacting Black and Brown communities. I also sit here with you as the program director and founder of Fundraising in Black, an organization that functions to teach people of color led and people of color serving nonprofits how to effectively fundraise to advance their missions and movements. And I'm proud to have been working in this space for the last 21 years. It has been a riveting journey. I got my start. I tell people I got my teeth cut, if you will, in fundraising back in, I want to say the early 2000s in Metro Atlanta. I started out fundraising in grassroots, community-based nonprofits. And at that time, there weren't very many faces like mine. There weren't very many Black or minority fundraisers in the space. And I loved the work enough. I loved impact, right? I loved being able to respond to needs in the community. I loved working and seeing people, which, I call the least of society, people that are housing insecure and food insecure, getting food, right? And getting housed and resourced, people that are coming home from having done bids in prison, being supported and reintegrating back into the community. And in all of my passion and given my lived experience with poverty, having grown up in the 80s, I'm an 80s baby. I grew up in East Oakland in the height of the war on drugs. I remember what that did to my community, right? I remember days when I was hungry and days when my family was living in a motel room, my mother, my sister, and I. So you parlay all of that experience, that lived experience, with passion. And what I found is a real gift, talent, and skill of resourcing these types of organizations and movements. I couldn't ask for anything better. I sit here before you having raised $400 million over the last 21 years, and I'm just incredibly full and proud of that. And I'm on my journey to work with companies like Funraise, to work with nonprofits that are really committed to improving outcomes for people in communities of color to liberate folks. And I'm taking anybody that wants to get on that train and journey with me.
I'm just saying, holy smokes, you've raised nearly $500 million in your career to advance the cause of nonprofit organizations serving the people who need it most. That's why I came back to the sector. Is we could use what we do. You could use your talents and your gifts to go make someone a lot more money and probably do better for yourself. But the fact that at the end of the day, you can look back on your career and you can say, look at the impact. I love that word, impact, that you have made. And I know that's not why you do it. You don't go back to say, hey, look what I did.
No,
But I have to stop and celebrate the fact that you're on pace to raise over $500 million for nonprofits and people worldwide. That's an incredible career. So that's something to celebrate, and I just am more excited now than ever to pick your brain and let you share your wisdom with our audience. It leads me to my next question. Using the sum of your experience, and as a marketer, I always love a good origin story that you just shared. So your experience and your origin story, how is that going to impact the way you build up and grow your new organization?
yeah, I mean, I think that lived experience is critical. And I'm going to be honest with you, David. I don't think that our sector, the nonprofit sector, nor the philanthropy sector, does a good enough job of centering on lived experience, right? I think that we've been very elitist and celebrating, folks based on the credentials they have, right? If you're a CFRE or a PhD, I tell
Mm-hmm.
people I'm from the school of hard knocks. I got a PhD. Having grown up where I grew up and seeing things that I had no business seeing as a kid, things that you protect your babies. By the way, you have beautiful, beautiful babies, those precious
Thank you.
babies. Nobody was there to protect me from some of the things that I experienced growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And the same is true for the organizations that I encounter. These are individuals that are going into nonprofit service and nonprofit leadership because they've experienced, like Jay Z said, a hard knock life. They grew up
Mm-hmm.
food insecure. They grew up having lived in poverty. They grew up with family members experiencing incarceration or contending with mental illness and addiction. They might have been sexually assaulted or whatever the case may be. They're bringing that lens and that lived experience to the work. And I am working to shine a light on that and center their voices, right? And
Mm-hmm.
leverage that as strategy, right? For fundraising that looks and feels very authentic, right? While we know that there's all these great pedagogies and strategies, you do this, you get that. I think that we need to celebrate and center these voices. And a lot of these voices are very diverse people of color
Mm-hmm.
in this space that bring that lens. And that's who I want to work with. That's who I want to tool and upskill to be the best fundraisers they can be because their missions and movements are relying on it and their people in the community are relying on it. We have to be the change that we want to see. And that's why I'm doing this.
I love that last part. We have to be the change that we want to see. I'm going to ask a question here, and I hope the heart of it comes through well, because you talked about folks that come up through the school of hard knocks, and having been in the for-profit sector for many years and plugged into the nonprofit sector for the last half decade. I will say I've never worked with smarter, more talented, more hardworking, innovative, brilliant people than those who work at nonprofit organizations because they needed the services when they were coming up, growing up, or at some point in their life, turning around and delivering those services. How can people like me who didn't come up through the school of hard knocks and have had fortunate careers and now sit in positions of influence in the sector and in the market, how can we become better allies to nonprofit organizations, specifically nonprofit organizations that are underprivileged or under-resourced? How can we collaborate? How can we partner? How can we do this better? Because we need to do this better.
Yeah, I think that for me, David, it's about access, right? And we've talked before and we talked about this. There are rooms that I'm not in, right? There are rooms that I don't even necessarily know exist, right? There are conferences that I don't even necessarily know exist where you are knowledgeable and, whether it's tech, like I don't claim to be the most tech savvy fundraiser, right? I rely on people like you that have an incredible brain trust that are in my network that I can leverage to find out, what tools, what I might need to consider integrating in my tech stack, right? What I might consider to more effectively do my work or to afford the best donor experience to donor prospects or even existing donors, right? So what I would say is this: if you and those that are interested in really demonstrating allyship make a commitment, you can't work with absolutely everybody, but what's an interesting organization that you can work with, that you're invested in that mission, that you can partner with or mentor, or even, I use the word sponsor, and not in the sense that everybody thinks about, right? When I say sponsor, I mean if a speaking opportunity comes up, right, that would be an exceptional opportunity for a people of color, a Black-led nonprofit, or a Black voice or a brown voice to be in that conversation, you say, you know what? I know Kia Croom. She runs an amazing organization called Fundraising in Black. Got to get her involved here. Do you mind if I introduce you to her? You know the rest, right? That sponsorship, that allyship is how things happen. It's like I explained to somebody, my name can get on a list. Like before I decided to become a full-time entrepreneur and open up a Black woman-owned fundraising firm, I was in the job market applying for VPs and development of director jobs. And there's a wonderful white male ally in my network named Jeff Scheifels at the Veritas Group. He has never been afraid to lift my name up, right? Whenever he has the opportunity, I know somebody, that makes a difference. My name can get on the list, but it takes a person's allyship and sponsorship even to create an opportunity for me. And I think that that's what it's about, and that's how it happens.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think a great segue into some of our other questions here today, building off of that, is bringing the lens back to you and your organization, what you've done in your career. How do you see leaders in your space, like you, outside of allyship and people doing what they should and sharing your voice and bringing you alongside and bringing you up? How have you seen leaders, and how have you successfully navigated getting seats at those tables or getting to be on those lists or part of those conversations? Asked another way, how have you seen specifically, minority-led organizations close some of that resource or access gap?
You know what, David? I'm really encouraged and empowered right now because I sit before you as somebody who said, you know what? I've had enough of begging, literally everything but literally saying, hey, please give me a job. Please give me an interview, right? I've done everything I could do. And dominant philanthropy, because of unconscious biases, because we know that people of color, there's a dearth of us in leadership within philanthropy agencies, and there's a dearth of us in leadership roles in nonprofits, right? Unconscious bias rears its ugly head and pushes people like me out of those opportunities. There are people that are more concerned about my funky little haircut and the color of my nails, right? Then they're interested in what I have to say because I don't necessarily look like a traditional nonprofit executive. I'm a disruptor. I'm not meant to. And I had to embrace that. And I said I'm encouraged a moment ago because there are Black-led, brown-led, minority-led, people of color-led, however you slice it, BIPOC-led organizations, BIPOC founders that are saying, you know what? Screw this. I'm not asking for a seat at this table anymore. I'm going to create my own damn table and I'm going to create my own chair and pull it up. I don't care if it's a fold up table and I got a fold up lawn seat. I'm setting up shop right here and whoever wants to join me can join me at this table. And that's where we're beginning to see traction. When we stop begging for bones, right? And asking, these actors that are in place to consider us for opportunities and create our own. That's the way that it's happening right now. And I'm so encouraged because I've never met more founders of color. I'm talking about people that care about humanity, that could be making tons of money doing other stuff, but said, you know what? This is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do. And I'm not turning down nothing but my collar. I'm going in here and I'm going to go for the resources violently. And I don't mean violently in a sense that, you're causing any harm to anybody, but violently meaning I'm going to take it by force. I'm not going to wait for somebody to pet me on my head and give me a treat. And that's how it's happening. And I couldn't be more encouraged by it.
I'm picking up something in what you're saying that I've been begging, praying, dreaming of for this sector, in that for so long, I've seen nonprofit leaders and nonprofit organizations operate from a sense of fear or scarcity.
Absolutely.
There's not enough resources. There's not enough access. There's not enough tools. There's not enough funding. And I've been challenging leaders in the space to operate out of a mindset of abundance. We're looking this year at, we're in one of the hardest economies we've ever been in, but we're also seeing some of the highest levels of philanthropy ever, right? So I just love what you're saying, like coming at this from a place of encouraged and empowered, expecting success and creating your own opportunities. That is so important and so powerful and so important for this sector right now. I think we could see a fundamental shift in the success and the impact nonprofit organizations have if we make that subtle but important mindset shift where this is mine for the taking rather than I'm lucky to have anything. It's a hard mindset shift to make, particularly in the way that the sector's run and leaders have been conditioned. But I think with voices like yours and leaders like yours changing the way you start organizations, changing the way you lead organizations, I'm excited to see what the next generation of nonprofit leaders bring to the table and how you impact lives. So I want to dig in a little bit on resources.
Go.
Kia, your website is already just a masterclass in resources on its own, information and strategies and thought leadership. What else can we do to provide resources? How can we better distribute those resources? Where can other leaders like yourself or people like me who want to learn more about fundraising, like where are the best places you've seen to go to, one, get access to those resources, but also what are the best resources you found?
So a couple of things. The resources that I found, the connections that I've established with great people like you has just come really organic to me. Just trying to stay plugged in, working my network on LinkedIn. I've been in pursuit of information because I'm always trying to learn to do things more efficiently. I'm one person, right, on a mission here. So, I seek out very purposefully folks like you, right, that have an incredible brain trust, incredible resources. For folks like yourself that want to plug into community, with folks like me, there are incredible spaces. One group that I plug into, for instance, I plug into all kinds of diversity organizations, like the Women of Color of Fundraising and Philanthropy. I did a session yesterday in their symposium. I moderated a session on courageous conversations, on DE&I, how to navigate those conversations, right? There are all sorts of incredible groups like that. Fundraising in Black, the organization that I founded, in terms of engaging minorities and sowing into their famine, right? Where they might have famine, where they might have need, where they might, there's new tech resources, new developments. You all published incredible toolkit, not too long ago. Those toolkits and those resources go a long way for organizations like ours that don't necessarily have the means to hire a tech consultant, right, to learn how to drive better conversions or optimize our donor experiences. So, continuing in the vein that you're in providing resources for nonprofits that are really out here on the ground in the trenches doing the work so that they can deliver, right, and provide a great donor experience so that they can better manage their data behind the scenes in terms of, a CRM, and so that they can get these things under wrap so that they can get into the work of changing lives and changing communities. I know that my fundraising program is well resourced. I've got best in class tech resources. I've got best in class tactical strategies. I'm encouraged, and I can stick to the business of changing lives and improving outcomes for people, liberating people that need liberation. Those things will move mountains for communities like mine.
Mm-hmm. Kia, you talked a little bit about tech there and tools and things like that. I wouldn't be a good tech geek if I didn't, double click in on that and ask your opinion. Thinking 2023, we're all starting to plan for what new platforms do we want to do? Where should we move? What things don't we have right now that are going to make us more effective fundraisers, marketers, communicators, leaders? What are you most excited for in the nonprofit tech space specifically? What do you see happening, or what have you learned about over the last year or two that's coming to light now that gives you that spark of excitement? You're like, hey, now we're finally arriving.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about all of the different tools and resources that exist to drive multi-channel fundraising, omni-channel fundraising. I'm telling folks, gone are the days where you send an email or I've worked in organizations where, the end of year appeal, we send one end of year appeal, right? And the majority of my donors like to receive communications that way, right? That was back in 2010. That was back in 2009, 2008. There are so many ways to engage with folks. There are so many ways to meet donors where they're hanging out at, right? If you might have donors that prefer to be texted. I can tell you, the folks that are texting me right now, Max Azra texts me at least 4 times a week, and they're not even a nonprofit. They're a retailer where I get my fabulous, one of many where I get my fabulous threads from. Hello, get my threads. They got it. They're texting me like, ooh, we got this new collection. And guess what, David? I'm looking at those text messages. I'm looking at them.
Yeah.
Guess what, David? They're on my Hulu, right? Through CCTV. They're speaking to me via Hulu. So what I'm saying is this. I'm excited about all the possibilities to engage with donors, and I'm committed to helping organizations that have primarily functioned on those traditional vehicles of direct mail and email to diversify those tactics so that they can hang out with donors where they are, right? And level up their tactical strategies. I'm excited. I'm excited about what I'm learning. I'm excited about, like I said, learning about new tools. You and I talked. I said, okay, thinking about fundraise, for fundraising in Black, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how fundraise can help fundraising in Black set the foundation it needs to
Mm-hmm.
thrive, right? So I'm getting really excited about these elements, that
Awesome.
multi-channel fundraising.
Awesome. I think it's so cool you talked about text messaging because it's, was such a hot conversation all last year in 2022.
Really?
And for a long time as a digital fundraiser, I said, no, don't do it. It's not a good strategy. You're not going to get the return that you think you're going to get. Focus on the proven channels of email and social and web. But man, it has taken off and it is so powerful now. I think there was a big shift over the last year or so, really looking at it in the ability to run direct response fundraising through SMS. And I was looking at some stats recently, and email open rates at their peak for a nonprofit hover between 15 and 20%. That's really good. Click-through rates are 3 to 5%. So if you have 100,000 people, you maybe get 1,000 people that come and take the action you were asking them to take, and that's considered really good. SMS open rates are at like 90+%, and click-through rates are at like 50+%. The success is astronomical. So that's something I think everyone should be paying attention to this year. And 2023 is looking for tools or platforms that help them communicate by text with their donors, because who doesn't have a phone in their hand 90% of their day anymore?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I just told you, Max Azra's got me. They might as well just say, hey,
Yep.
buy. Look, they might be thinking, listen, let's send this to her. She's going to buy. We're about to
Yep.
convert. She's about to spend a ton of money on boots and, bow tie blouses. They got me. I should be their poster child. I should have stock, right?
That's
Imagine how, if I'm that responsive to a retailer, I
mhm.
would gather that in talking to me, that I'm very mission driven. Missions move me, right?
Mhm.
Imagine if I have a relationship with a nonprofit that I love, that I'm bought and sold, believe in their mission and their work, and they're communicating with me that way. Imagine what kind of conversion they'll get from me if they meet me there,
I
right?
believe it. Yeah, that one-to-one relevance. It's something you said too a minute ago, and something that I've been saying, challenging people in this space, fundraisers, specifically digital fundraisers, is to be part of the conversation and be available and accessible when your supporters are ready to engage with you. It's the beauty of where we're at as fundraisers and communicators and leaders in this sector, is we have the tools, the technology, and the platforms now to be just as relevant as any for-profit retailer. We have access to the same channels, access to the same ad inventory, email networks, CRMs. It's a pretty cool time to be a nonprofit leader, but also a little bit of a daunting time to be a nonprofit leader. So, Kia, question for you. As you're building up Fundraising in Black, what framework or frame of reference, key questions do you ask when you're looking for platforms to help you grow your organization?
Yeah, I'm looking at what the integrations are. For instance, let's take Funraise, for instance, right? Because this is a real thing that we're working on. While fundraising in Black is new and nascent, right? 3 years from now, 2 years from now, I'm gonna even say 1 year from now, because I'm expecting big things and incredible returns, right?
Mm-hmm.
As my constituents, as I scale and increase the number of constituent records I have access to, right? As my relationships grow, and should I get to a place where I want to go to what I know, right, at a CRM, I've always been a Blackbot. I think I've spent probably the last 15 years of my career using Blackbot. Once I scale and grow a bit, will it integrate, right? What's it going to
Mm-hmm.
take for me to do that? How will it plug into, does it integrate with Tatango, for instance, right? Which is a vehicle that I'm a fan of for texting, or does it afford, or, I might pick your brain and say, well, what have you found that works really well? We talked about HubSpot. Like when I think about my website for Kia Croom fundraising and philanthropy, what integrations are available to me? Can I manage my emails from here? Can I get rid of, MailChimp? I mean, what are the bells and whistles that I can use to communicate with my partners and, potential clients or existing clients via email? I'm looking for those integrations because I understand that this is iterative, and that as I grow, as I scale, my organization's needs are going to change. And I want to know that I can keep pace with the best in class tools that are available. And I also want to know that I'm not going to break my piggy bank trying to do it. Let's just keep it real.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that I'm most excited to see come to the nonprofit sector this year and in the years to come is that growth-minded model. And I've seen it slowly being adopted in the sector, but it always is. The nonprofit sector is a few years behind what's happening in the for-profit sector. But the mindset of it's a fundamental shift from being we're fundraisers or we're nonprofit people and we have to do things differently to, hey, that works really well in the for-profit sector. How do we do that here? How do we grow? How do we scale? How do we change the donor mindset from being a handout to being an investor? It's something we talk a lot about at Funraises. We're a venture-backed startup. We've asked people to give us a lot of money to execute on the dream and the vision we have for our company. Why is that any different in the nonprofit sector? Why do nonprofit organizations have to act like donors are saviors?
Yeah, tell me about
Let's talk about donors being in investors. Let's double click on that. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
That's been something I've been throwing around for a while.
No, I mean, you're preaching to the choir because number one, I have complex feelings about that ideology as a Black female from a community of color. When you think about philanthropy, you think about this Western model, right? Where you think about, the saviors, right? And we know that the dominant face of philanthropy is that of the white male, right? And philanthropy has posited that, we know that there's a wealth gap, a racial wealth gap, and people of color are marginalized by that, right? So when you think of who's sowing into community, who's shoring up and funding and supporting nonprofits, you go back to thinking about that conventional face of philanthropy being that white male. When you take that further and you parlay that with that savior, right? To suggest that, this white male conventional face of philanthropy holds all the cards and, is going to always save the day. I have real issues with that, right? I know incredible Black and brown women that have been changing laws and lives since the beginning of forever and fighting for social justice. So the way that I look at this, whether I'm talking to a white male philanthropist, whether I'm talking to a Black female philanthropist, whether I'm talking to a multinational fortune firm, I'm looking at us as being partners in affecting durable social change. And when I look at it that way, when I look at what I bring to the partnership, because it's more than just the resource side of the partnership, there's the implementation and the strategy and the boots on the ground. So the philanthropic dollars in that partnership is one side of the coin. It's one part of the story. When I look at it like, okay, you've got means that I don't necessarily have, but I've got the know-how. I look at it as though, I might not be bankrolling like Oprah or Robert F. Smith, but guess what? I got a master plan and a dollar and a dream, and I want to affect some social change. And we're partners. We're co-conspirators. And when I look at it from that lens, David, it changes my posture. I'm sitting up with my shoulders erect. I'm in full Sasha Fierce Beyonce mode, right? Because I'm serious about the work of changing lives and communities. And this billionaire, millionaire partner, I'm just as valuable as they are, right? And together we can achieve some great things. But I'm not looking at this relationship from a place of beholden, one way relationship. Does that make sense? We're partners.
I love that positioning. Because that's what we want, right? As fundraisers, is we're not asking donors to be the heroes. We're not asking donors to do the mission. We're asking donors to invest.
Absolutely.
Invest through us. Invest in the people we help, because they have a heart for the people we help, but they don't have the means to help the people we help. You do. You, as the nonprofit leader, you do, as the nonprofit organization, have the means, the strategies, the visions, the experience, the know-how to turn that donor's dollar into literal lives changed. And I love the visual of the nonprofit leader sitting at the table at the head of a boardroom, shoulders back, power suit on, talking to their donors and saying, here's how I alone can turn your investment into a month worth of meals for that family who's food insecure. I can turn your $1.50. You can't even go buy lunch for that. And I can feed and shelter a man, woman, or child for a day. 3 meals, shelter overnight, get them off the street. The influence and impact that nonprofit leaders have, I hope so dearly this year we as a collective industry can shift that mindset to donors are important, donors are valuable, donors are necessary. We are fundraisers for a reason, but they are our partners, right? That's such a perfect word. They are our partners. They have a resource that we don't have as a nonprofit organization. But we have tools, experience, vision, and abilities that the donors don't have to impact and make the change that they want to see in the world. So I'm so excited to see leaders like you champion that cause. And I hope you know that, with the little influence that I have, the little voice that I have, I'll be right there with you all year long as it takes to change this mindset. Because as soon as we get that shift made, man, we are going to see some crazy change happen in this world.
I love that, David, and I stand by that. Donors are partners, and we provide them with an entree to affect durable social change to achieve an incredible social return. And I hope listeners out there are like kind of brushing their shoulders off, like, I got the sauce. I got it, and really look at it that way. Own your seat at that table confidently, because the work that you're doing is making a difference in somebody's life. It's putting a meal on the table for a kid. It's providing a safe space for a kid after school, a little girl like me that needs somebody to protect her. It's helping somebody get a job and become self-reliant. This is what it's about, those social returns, and they are immeasurable in my estimation.
I 100% agree. Kia, we are rounding down our time here. I want to be respectful of your time. I have so thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I've learned so much. I'm going to come back to this podcast and just listen to your wisdom over and over as I set my plan and my strategy and where I want to invest my time this year. But I have a few just hot take questions for you that we can capitalize on your wisdom and your experience to round out our time.
Yeah.
So question number one, it's the beginning of 2023. Leaders, fundraisers, partners are sitting down and going, okay, what's our plan for this year? What should we do? What should we focus on? Give me 2 or 3 trends that you see are exciting you this year that you think every organization should be paying attention to.
Can't stress it enough. Omnichannel fundraising strategy, like we talked about, tech, social, whether it's social for, new donor acquisitions or not. I've tested social a couple of times and found that wasn't the best vehicle for acquisitions always, right? Investing in ads, but it's this place and space where my donors and donor prospects are hanging out. I want to meet them there. Texting. I'm giving a lot of thought to that donor experience. How can I drive conversions on my site? How are donors or visitors to my website interacting with the content on my site? Are they coming to my site for resources, right? In that resource bank that I have? Are they coming to my site to check out video? How are they engaging with me, and how can I optimize that experience? How can I drive a conversion, right, with my web visitors? If they're donors, if they're visitors that I want to turn into donor prospects, right? Into donors, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. What call to actions? I want strong call to actions, so people know and can respond and convert in the ways that I intend for them to, right? These are things that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, how to be kind of omnipresent, right? How to engage people when they are demonstrating interest in whatever I'm bringing to the table. Right. I want them to, have a touch when from the time they visit my site to the time they leave. I want to be omnipresent with them. So what tools will enable me to do that? These are a few of the things that I'm thinking about.
Awesome. I love that. Another question for you. 2022 was a weird year.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Weird economy. Politics were up and down. Towards the end of the year, we saw nearly 30,000 people get laid off from some of the biggest tech companies in the world. It's easy to have a bleak outlook coming into 2023. I don't think we should. I think we should be, like you said, confident, excited, motivated. What would your encouragement to other leaders like you be if you could sit across the table having a cup of coffee? They're looking and going, I don't know how we do it this year. What's your word of encouragement when that's the lens to try and, be excited, be confident going into this year?
Yeah, so what I want to say to those leaders is to be excited, to be confident, to remember there have been some gains, there have been some wins in our space, right? And to be encouraged by that, right? And I want to encourage leaders like myself to understand, listen, you don't have to have everything figured out down to a T. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good. You've got incredible ideas. You've got incredible lived experience. You are impassioned. And I believe that your heart is really in the right place. And I'm a person that, at my best, I'm always looking at the glass being half full instead of half empty. So I believe that you're pouring your very heart into this work. And I believe that if you do the work of building the relationships and telling your story, right, and traversing this sector, you're going to find your tribe and your tribe will find you, and you'll be speaking their language. And we know that this work is highly relational. So if you're investing in meeting the right people, if you're invested in what your organization does really, really well and honing in on that, you're going to be successful in this space. I wouldn't worry terribly about what the economy, whether this and whether that. is I'm not saying to just disregard, economics, but what I'm saying is philanthropy. I mean, I'm reading, and I think I read a resource that Funraise sent out. Giving Tuesday is on tap to generate some $3 billion. There are very altruistic and philanthropic people that want to achieve those social returns, right? Fine tune your message, your methods, and get relational, be relational. And I don't believe you'll have any problem. I don't. I believe in the work that these leaders are doing and looking to do. I'm hopeful.
I love what you said to don't let perfect be the opposition of progress,
Absolutely.
right? It's so easy to want everything perfectly on brand, everything laid out nicely, every pixel in place before you launch anything, but half the time it's just being
Tell me
present
about it.
and being real and authentic. I love that. Thank
No,
you.
thank you.
Kia, thank you so much for your time today. This is going to be an amazing episode. I'm so excited for our audience to get to listen to this. I'll make sure, we will link in our show notes out to your organization's new website, to your website, link out to your podcast, because your podcast has some amazing resources for leaders like everyone listening to this podcast, including myself. So thank you for your time. Want to give you a chance. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. And I want to tell the folks listening that, you are doing incredible work. You're changing lives, creating opportunities for people, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And if I can be a resource, if I can be a support, get at me. I'm not hard to find. Drop me a line, slide in my DMs. Look at it. It goes down in the DM, slide in my DMs and, let's talk about it. And that's all I have to say. I'm just really, really grateful for the opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you.